You are watching the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 559. I'm going to be covering Yemen shortly, but let's begin with Gaza. We'll pull up this map. I've got us a new map for longtime listeners and viewers. This is a really disgusting map from the United Nations that published on that shows you the no-go zones on the maps that I have been describing on our maps for the last number of weeks. Today is the 47th day of a total blockade on the Gaza Strip, not just a ceasefire violation, but reneging on the ceasefire terms that were agreed upon and guaranteed by the United States. To have tents is the predominant violation from the ceasefire, but humanitarian aid into Gaza has been completely cut off, as Nora described in the news report. There's 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza who are in need of emergency shelter, and those tents and those trailers have not been allowed in. No food, no medicine, no medical supplies, no fuel. All have been blocked now for 47 straight days. We're reporting this on April the 17th. There's 500,000. You can see on that map, the purple areas are the no-go zones. Those are effectively the buffer zones. You can see in the north, that's the buffer zone north of Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia. That's where there was an Israeli settlement until the year 2005 during the disengagement. Those settlements were uprooted. If you look south of Gaza City on that map, that's the Netzarim corridor. That was also an Israeli settlement. And then you move down to the south. We'll zoom in on the south in this next frame. We're going to start with the north. Sorry. So you can see a north there. There's Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, and you can see the purple zone is the buffer zone. That's where the settlement used to be. Then the buffer zone around the edges has expanded from 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers, and you can see on the map that the UN has marked 65% of the Gaza Strip as a no-go zone. The Israeli military is not pushed all the way across the Netzarim corridor that you're looking at there. They are just enforcing it with a shoot to kill from the Salahadin road. So the military has not pushed all the way across to the coastal road on Netzarim corridor, but it's a shoot to kill zone. You need United Nations coordination in order to cross through that area. And the Israeli military bragged this week about 1,200 airstrikes since they resumed the war full on March 18th was the beginning of the massacre, where they began with where they killed hundreds of people in 80 airstrikes in less than 10 minutes and a surprise attack. All across Gaza. So we're starting in the north. So this is, you're looking at the north here. They're expanding those buffer zones, like I said, from 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers. If we look at the next map, you can see the evacuation map that the Israeli military, this is how they're doing it. They just do it by grid at a time. This is Shujaiya and Tufan Daraj area, and they're pressing in the buffer zone, and the buffer zone is enforced with shoot to kill. This week, Abu Ubaidah released a message saying on Tuesday, saying that we announced that we have lost contact with the team guarding soldier Eden Alexander. That's the American soldier who the Trump administration is trying to get out first. That's my comment. Back to Abu Ubaidah. We are still trying to reach them. It seems that the occupation army is deliberately trying to kill him and hence relieve themselves from the pressure that is caused by dual citizen prisoners in order to continue the genocide against our people. Now, that could be psychological operation by Qassam in saying that, because this prisoner is the one that the Trump administration seems to care about and seems to be wanting to negotiate on. But with 1,200 airstrikes and upwards of 2,000 people killed, we know from captives who were released that the most dangerous part of being in Gaza as a captive is the Israeli military. And there's 59 captives remaining in Gaza. And and as many as 37 of them have been killed by Israeli strikes. So that is a very real possibility that that's in fact true. And one of the captured soldiers did an interview this week, and it was pulled from Israeli state television because she said that Netanyahu needs to negotiate to get the rest of the rest of the Israeli prisoners back from Gaza, and she asked to have that be pulled because she was facing a wave of vitriol and hatred targeting her from pro-Netanyahu accounts, calling her a trash girl and suggesting that she be sent back to Gaza. So even in Israeli society, there's a split on whether they want these captives back if it means ending the genocide. And when they do come back, they're called trash if they ask for the rest of the prisoners to be resumed. So in Shujaiya area here, if we go to the next slide, we can see this is the first sniper operation that we have seen since the resumption of fighting. And you can see in these slides that I'm going to show you today why the military is out of reach largely. You can see them here. They're up on a hill, Tel El Montar, east of Shujaiya. This is the highest point in the Gaza Strip. And you can see them. There's snipers. There's snipers up on top of the hill, and they're just shooting anything that moves. And that is their positions. They're not going down. They're not on the ground inside built up areas where the resistance is waiting for them in their territorial units, ready to defend the territory. This is an edit I have done so that the soldier doesn't get killed on camera, which he pretty clearly did. It's a 50 cal sniper rifle, and it hits uh, that berm, and we know that that round penetrates dirt. I've shown you it penetrating 3 cinder blocks before, so that soldier's down. Again, this is the first on film confrontation, but this week there was a number reported both by the Israelis and by the Palestinians that there has been clashes on the edges of these buffer zones. In Shujaiya, there's been multiple operations. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 announced this week that they had clashed with fighters east of Shujaiya, so they're still not in Shujaiya. And again, 𝐓𝐴 �คึ𝐿 got another Merkava tank with a pre-planted IED, and the Israeli military confirmed that operation. If we look at the next slide here, you can see this is the main focus of the resistance right now. You can see the tanks are well set back in the buffer zone, and this is a rocket artillery attack by 𝐓𝐴 �คึ𝐿 Islamic Jihad. This operation was on Sunday. There was also multiple of these types of rocket attacks this week. And just to say that the resistance operations does not relate to the capacity remaining in the resistance. It doesn't indicate that they are in any way broken. We know from Israeli military intelligence that spoke this week, Amman, their IDF military intelligence, that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 has more than 40,000 fighters, which is more than they had when the war began. We know that also from U.S. intelligence, who told us back during the ceasefire that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 had recruited 15,000 additional fighters. And so even if you use the highest, most absurd number that the Israeli military said of fighters killed, those numbers show that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is bigger than it was before. And you have veteran fighters who are the fighters who have survived this war are the best fighters, and they can pass on that training very easily. So there is no indication between the capacity of the resistance and the number of resistance operations you're seeing. And you're going to see that in this next little bit. I'm going to show you a few slides from the south of Gaza. This is the UN map in the south, and the area with that black line that essentially runs across. That's marking the Rafah governorate, but it's also basically the line of the Morag corridor that I told you about that they're cutting between Khan Yunis and Rafah. And Israel has made a big fuss about this in the Israeli media, that they're cutting another corridor, and they make it seem like it's this intense military operation that they're succeeding at. But take a look at these next pictures and you can get a real good sense of what they're talking about. So this is the Israeli military positions. They just pile themselves up on a hill, and snipers just sit there ready to shoot anyone that moves. This is the Morag corridor. If we look at the next slide, you can see what we're talking about. This is the Morag corridor. So when I said in previous weeks that the resistance attacking the buffer zones is equivalent to attacking Israel itself, this is what I'm talking about. That massive open space is patrolled by the air, by drones, attack helicopters, fighter jets, and then you have the military stacked up along those berms in an area where there's miles on either side of just open space. So it's not realistic for the resistance to be carrying out these low success probability operations and fighting in an open field like this. This doesn't make any sense from a military science perspective. If you look at the next slide, you can see it also. This is the Morag corridor as well. Like, look at what you're looking at there. First of all, to claim that territory is not a military achievement, as you can see. There's nothing around it. All you're doing is destroying the agricultural sector in Gaza, which is all this genocide has been doing, is destroying life in Gaza. You're not defeating the resistance in any way. There's been shelling operations. 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐿 reported multiple shelling operations in the south along this Morag corridor, which makes sense. Mortars, firing mortars and firing 107 millimeter rocket artillery, like we saw in that previous image from 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐿. So I just wanted to show people those. Is there one more? I think there's one more that shows the just the openness of this area. So that is the Gaza Strip. We are going to turn now to Yemen. We've got a couple fresh maps on the Yemen front to get people acclimatized to the area we're talking about. So the main Ansar Allah territory is in the red there around Sana'a. And of course, up in the top, you can see Israel, Gaza, Amman, Jordan, and then you can see the Red Sea is that long, skinny sea there that connects to the Suez Canal and into the Mediterranean. And down at the bottom by Yemen there, that's the Bab el-Mandab. That choke point is what has been blocked off by Yemeni forces to Israeli shipping and to ships servicing Israel. Today is the 33rd straight day of U.S. assault on Yemen in order to protect Israel's genocide in Gaza. The Yemeni armed forces continued their long-range attacks against Israel, drones, ballistic missiles. No attacks, still no reported attacks on commercial shipping at all. All the attacks are concentrated on American forces, aircraft carriers, and Israel with long-range attacks. The second U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson, joined the USS Truman. They are stationed in the Gulf of Aden there, actually out in the Arabian Sea. They're off the coast of Oman, technically. They're doing the same thing as the Truman is doing. The Truman is up north of Jeddah, up near Yanbu port in Saudi Arabia, 2/3 of the way up the Red Sea there. They're trying to stay out of range of a number of Yemeni armed forces, anti-ship cruise missiles and anti-ship ballistic missiles. So they're not anywhere near the Yemeni coast where they get hit really hard. This week, Central Command, the U.S. Central Command broadcast a message that said the USS Harry Truman Carrier Strike Group continues nonstop 24/7 operations against the Houthis. There's been more than 350 American airstrikes, according to a U.S. official in the Wall Street Journal. But tallies of reports from the media in Yemen indicate that that number is actually a lot higher than that. Just in the last 24 hours, Yemeni media reported 70 attacks, and we know that Abdul Malik al-Houthi talked in his speech last week about 90 strikes in a single day at one point. So 350 sounds really low. We know also from previous reporting that this operation is now well over $1 billion operation, according to Pentagon officials. And also this week, the U.S. dropped a psyop into the Wall Street Journal, saying that the U.S. is working with Yemeni militias, U.S. mercenaries, and the United Arab Emirates, planning a ground offensive against Ansar Allah. This is what the Wall Street Journal said. Private American security contractors provided advice to the Yemeni factions on a potential ground operation, people involved in the planning said. The United Arab Emirates, which supports these factions, raised the plan with American officials in recent weeks, the U.S. and Yemeni officials said. The U.S. is open to supporting a ground operation by local forces. And again, that's from the Wall Street Journal, their intelligence reporter. So obviously, someone was in their ear to post that. And the talks are about the Hodeidah port, which is the key port in on the northern edge there of Yemen, northwest of Sana'a, that you can see there, which is the capital. If we look at the next map, this is a map of the range of Yemeni missiles. The outside red belt, that is the Yafa drone that I showed you on previous episodes. It has a range of 2,500 kilometers. The next rim, the second thinner purple ring, that is the Palestine 2 ballistic missile, also shown on previous episodes. And if you haven't seen those episodes, you can find that on our YouTube channel. There's a playlist of the resistance report, and you can find all of these in order of date. So if you want to go back and check those out, but you can see the rings of ballistic missile and drone capacity based out of Yemen, and the multiple rings go ballistic. They go drone, ballistic missile, drone, ballistic missile, in that order. If we look at the next one, we have ballistic missile strikes from Yemen on fired towards Tel Aviv and an airbase south of Tel Aviv in the Ashdod area. This is from Sunday. And we can see on this next slide a drone attack. This is civilian footage in Jordan on Friday of a Yafa drone that was downed by the Israelis. Said they downed it over Jordan. The Yemenis said that they launched it. This is near Amman, Jordan. So the Yafa drone, it can be in flight for 14 hours, 2,500 kilometers, and carries a 50-kilogram warhead. So that might be what we're seeing burning there. Then the Israeli military said that Ansar Allah has fired 220 ballistic missiles and 170 drones in the first phase of this battle before the ceasefire. And since the ceasefire, we know that there's been dozens of both reported. The Yemenis said the Yemeni armed forces targeted 2 Israeli military targets in the Tel Aviv area with the Yafa drone. The Yemeni armed forces assure the Palestinian people that we are committed to supporting them and will not stop or retreat, and that the confrontation ongoing with the American military aggression against our country will not prevent the Yemeni armed forces from continuing to perform our moral duty toward the people of Palestine until the aggression against them stops and the siege is lifted. And in this next slide, you can see how consistent these attacks on Israel have been, both by the Palestinians, by Hezbollah, and by the Yemenis. This is from the Israeli Institute for National Security Studies, which is their essentially their intelligence cutout, their arm's length military and security think tank that keeps these totals. So 34,444 times there has been Israelis running to bomb shelters in 1,348 towns is where the sirens have sounded. For people who can't see the graph that we're showing you, it just displays them from October 2023 right through to this week. If we look to the next slide, we can see the USS Truman again spotted on satellite imagery. This is a Sentinel-2 satellite, and it's via MT Anderson, who's a tracker. And you can see the Harry S. Truman. You can see its Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, guided missile destroyers, and also a cruiser there, the USS Gettysburg. The USS Gettysburg is the one that shot down an F-18 Super Hornet that took off from the USS Truman. So the Truman is carrying somewhere between 60 and 80 fighter jets. And we look at the next slide, you can see the USS Vinson has now arrived. You can see where it is there just off the coast of Oman. This is from the Copernicus satellite, and it's via Tom Bike on Twitter, who does good open source and AIS tracking of these ships. These are both just recently spotted. So now there's double the aircraft carriers, which doubles the number of planes. There's, roughly 160 to 180 fighter jets now deployed to fight the Yemenis. There's also, as I reported previously, an additional air wing moved to Jordan, and there's B-2 bombers in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean that have been carrying out bombing raids. B-2 bombers are the largest bombers the U.S. have. They're 10 times the size, can carry 10 times the ordnance of the F-18s that are bombing, and they can also carry heavier bunker busters, which will be used, likely be used against the underground missile production factories that the Yemenis have. And we're going to look this week, after showing you the ballistic missiles and anti-ship missiles, we're going to show you the anti-ship cruise missiles here. So this next one these are the principal two that the Yemenis use. This is the Mandab anti-ship cruise missile. And this is an 800 plus kilometer range. So this is the one that's being fired at the Americans when they're set back from the Yemeni coast. And also these are shown from a parade in early 2023. All of these weapons have undergone developments and are constantly being upgraded for their distance. And they're also constantly being manufactured. That's the principal one. If we look at the next one, you can see this is the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞 anti-ship cruise missile. It's very similar to the PAVA 𝐓𝐡𝐞 land attack cruise missile. It's a anti-ship cruise missile adaptation. If we look at the next one, you can see the PAVA. This is the PAVA. I showed you this during the Operation True Promise. This is the land attack cruise missile that the Iranians fired at the Israelis during Operation True Promise #1. And also consistent this week, if we look at the next slide, you can see another Reaper drone was downed. The fourth Reaper downed since March 15th, the fifth since March 2nd, when Israel blockaded Gaza, and the Yemeni armed forces announced the blockade of the Red Sea. This brings the tally to 19 since the battle in the Red Sea began in solidarity with Gaza, and 23 since 2017, when the Americans were bombing the Yemenis with the Saudis. And Abu Ubaidah released a message to the Yemenis this week. He said, "The loyal brothers in Yemen persist in paralyzing the heart of the Zionist entity, standing firmly by Gaza as it faces a brutal war of extermination. Despite paying a heavy price in their precious blood and resources of their dear nation as a result of this unwavering loyalty to Palestine and Al-Aqsa. Palestine and its people will never forget this honorable stance by the Yemenis." So that is the resistance report for day 559. Gaza and Yemen still going strong despite the joint American-Israeli efforts to suppress their resistance.